up, friends? Welcome back to the channel. It's been like a week since I last posted, but I found it last week and it kind of took over my entire life. But I'm free, I'm good, have plenty of content ideas, so ready to push that shit out, I guess. If you're new here, my name is Chaselyn and I post like lifestyle, travel, fashion type videos, so if that interests you, go ahead and subscribe and keep up with whatever shit I'm gonna put out over the next few months while I'm inside. So if you know me, you know I'm always traveling. Like if there's a school break, I'm gone. Spring break, summer break, fall break, winter break, long weekend, MLK, Labor Day, Memorial Day, I'm out. A lot of people ask me how I manage to do that while I'm still in school. I always tell people that I'm just very irresponsible with my money, which is true. But I do have a job, so a lot of money that I save goes to travel. But I do have a lot of tips for like finding cheap flights, finding cheap Airbnbs and hotels and hostels and that type of thing. So today I'm gonna share that with you. A few weeks ago I posted on Instagram and I was like, ask me any travel questions that you may have. So I'm just gonna give you my tips, answer some questions, and then hopefully you'll be seeing the world on a budget. Let's jump right into it. My first and most important tip is to be flexible. Be flexible with when you can travel and be flexible with where you wanna go. Keep multiple dates that you wanna travel in mind. So if you know you have 4 breaks within your academic year, leave all of those open and be willing to go anywhere during any of those times. Remember, we're trying to save money, so our first choice might not be a possibility if you're not trying to spend $2,000 on an airline ticket across the world. Be flexible with your time and also be flexible with location. If you want to go to Paris in the spring, that might not be possible because that's a very big time for travel to Paris or pretty much anywhere in Europe, so that might be a better time to like go to Antarctica if you want to go there, you know? Like, we're working on a budget, y'all. Like we don't have a lot of options. Like, so that leads me to my second tip. Be willing to travel not in luxury accommodation. Again, we're working on a budget. 5-star hotels are not possible on a budget. I'm sorry. If you want to stay in a 5-star hotel, fly first class, this video and these tips are not for you. Sometimes you can find a way to make it happen, but it's super rare and don't count on it. With those 2 tips in mind, now I have some actual concrete resources. My most important tip is watch flights. Flight prices are always fluctuating. Some days you'll check it and it's $1,300. Some days it'll be $400. I'm telling you, get an app, check every day for 6 weeks. Watch flights for multiple locations and multiple dates because they're constantly changing, so you can compare one location versus another and take the cheaper option for whatever break that you're traveling for. There's a ton of really helpful apps to watch flights. Some of my favorites are Hopper, Skyscanner, and Just Fly. And then there's also a Twitter called Secret Flying that posts deals all the time. That's how I found my flight for $500 to Thailand and China. If you have a Twitter, definitely follow that. I think that's honestly the biggest like route source that I have. I constantly am checking, like if I'm bored, I'll just pop on over to that Twitter, book a flight. Just kidding, I can't do that. Google Flights is also actually pretty good for finding cheap deals, but the thing about Google is that it tracks where in the world you're looking for the flight from. So if you're trying to book a flight from like your home airport thing, like I live in Atlanta and our airport is one of the busiest in the world, so flights out of it can be really expensive. So if I'm in Atlanta booking a flight out of Atlanta, it'll cost me more. So I always try to book flights on Google using incognito because it's not tracking my location. So I've managed to save between like $20 to $50 just doing that. And a lot of people don't know that. So always book an incognito or use another browser. With watching flights, look for flights with layovers. The longer the layover, the cheaper the flight usually. And if you get a layover, you can also see more countries and more places in one trip. So I went to Thailand in December and I found a cheap flight. It was like $560. I saw China too because I had like a 2-day layover. No, I had a day layover on the way there and then I had a day layover on the way back. Got to see Thailand and China. It wasn't as expensive as it could have been. It was kind of tiring. So if you like want a break, I don't know what to tell you. If you're traveling internationally, also look for flights out of bigger and more accessible airports like JFK, LaGuardia, LAX, Chicago O'Hare. Sometimes Dallas is also very cheap. So if you book a flight out of there, you can buy a flight from your local airport to that city. Sometimes that can be cheaper than just going directly out of your airport. That really only works for me for international flights. As far as domestic, just stick to like your local old airport, you know? Also check one-ways. Sometimes buying one way there and one way back is cheaper. There's also a cool website called Luggage, which checks flights with layovers and finds you the cheapest option. My fourth tip is to always compare hotels and Airbnbs. Also check the predominant method of lodging for the country that you're going to. For example, in Singapore, Airbnb isn't as popular, so it was a lot more expensive for me to book like a room on Airbnb, so I checked out hostels instead and saved like $100 a night, which was amazing. Also make sure that Airbnbs are actually allowed in the country that you're going to. When I went to Bangkok, Airbnbs technically weren't allowed, and I stayed at a high-rise building, and I walked in the building with my friend, and the first sign that we see is no Airbnb. So we were sneaking around the entire time that we were there. It was really awkward, and we could have been deported from the country for breaking their laws. But just be safe, follow the law, don't be a stupid American if you're American watching this video. Just be respectful and stay where you're allowed to stay. My next tip is don't sleep on hostels. I feel like everyone has this association with hostels that they're like bad or run down or unsafe, but really a lot of them are. My favorite website for booking a safe, clean hostel is Hostel World. I use that pretty much anytime I go to Europe, especially if I'm traveling by myself. You can usually find a cheaper room, like a way cheaper room than you would on Airbnb. Hostels are a really great way to meet people in the location that you're going to. You might not meet locals, but you usually meet people from all over the world. One time I went to London, I stayed in a hostel during my 18-hour layover, and I met a group of people. It was like 12 people from all over the world, and we just had a fun, wholesome night out. So this sounds really stupid, but my next tip for you is don't forget about buses. Buses are a really great way to see whatever country you're going to for very cheap. If you've been to Europe or have done research about traveling in Europe, you've probably seen Flixbus or some type of bus company like that. And usually tickets from one country to another range between like 35 to 70 euros, and that can be so much cheaper than taking a flight within Europe. Buses are a huge method of transportation in Asia or in areas that there isn't a lot of like rail transportation. So if you're traveling and there's not a cheap train ticket, definitely check out buses. Another tip for saving money is to plan your trip beforehand. I'm so bad at this. I will literally just get on a plane and not know what I'm doing at all. Like, I never book anything in advance. I never know what I want to do, and it always ends up costing me more money than I would have had to spend if I did know what the fuck I wanted to do. I'm not talking about like planning every single minute of every single day, but have an idea of what you want to get accomplished. Do you want to do touristy shit? Go and see the Eiffel Tower, go see the Great Wall of China. Just know that you want to see these things. But I will say that it can be more fun to be spontaneous, but just know that it'll probably cost you a little bit of money. Next, try to bring a carry-on and not check a bag if you can. I always overpack, and I always pay extra in baggage fees on planes, trains, buses. Like, it's ridiculous. So if you're really trying to save that money, carry on. Invest in like a nice carry-on if you can, because that'll always give you a little bit more space. I love my away suitcase for a carry-on, and I decided that because I do travel a lot, I should probably invest in that. I know that can be a little expensive, so you can always get a good one from like TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Ross. Target has Luggage too, I think. Goodwill, thrift stores. Just do your research, keep looking, you'll find the perfect bag to be your carry-on. My last tip, and one of the most important tips that I touched on all throughout the video, is just do your research. Know what you're getting into, know what the country is like, know what the place is like. Be safe, especially if you're traveling alone. I travel alone a lot. I travel with groups of only women a lot. It can make you seem very vulnerable, and unfortunately, sometimes no matter how safe you are, you can be at risk for bad things happening. And the safer you are, the less likely you'll end up in a foreign hospital paying money, so that's good. So now I have a bunch of questions that some people have asked me on Instagram, so I'm just gonna answer those for you and get a little bit more personal about my travel recommendations and some of the experiences I've had while traveling. Someone asked me for sites for flights, specifically international ones, free attractions, and food. I mentioned some sites for flights earlier: Skyscanner, JustFly, Hopper. There's this website / book company called Lonely Planet that has a ton of guides for different places all over the world. It'll give you a free guide to the city and outline a bunch of tourist attractions. When I went to Amsterdam, I used that a lot, and I didn't end up paying for anything that I went to in Amsterdam except for a museum. Food, I always recommend to just ask local people. Anything that you find online will usually be a tourist trap, and that is always way more money, always. Someone asked me, do you journal on your trips? I haven't recently, but I used to. Especially when I was traveling alone, like I would just go sit on a bench or in a park and just journal how I was feeling and the things that I did so I can go back and look at it. And I really like doing that, like just, I don't know, just sort of taking inventory on how I was feeling and how I've grown in that location and like how that location made me feel. It helps me determine what places I want to go back to. But if I'm with a group, I don't really journal because I don't know, I feel like it's kind of awkward just like being with your friends and then you whip out this journal. Someone asked me if I could only take 3 things with me, what would those things be? Probably my camera, my phone, and then sneakers. I'll just be naked for the rest of the time. Challenges you've seen from all the places you've traveled to. I've been very lucky in my travel experience, so I haven't faced a lot of like travel problems, but I do find that currency exchange is usually the most confusing / the hardest thing to like do. For example, I traveled to Cuba like 2 years ago and you can't get Cuban currency, or at the time you couldn't get Cuban currency on American soil. You had to take out money from the ATM before you went there and then exchange it when you get to Cuba. Like American credit cards and debit cards didn't work there, so what you brought in cash was all that you had. And then on top of that, they had 2 different currencies. It had 2 different exchange rates for the 2 currencies, so that was kind of hard to deal with. If you don't look at exchange rates and currencies before you go, you can end up paying a lot more in exchange rates and fees. And yeah, so again, that just goes with doing your research and hopefully you'll avoid that. Next question. Somebody asked, how does one safely shake ass in a country they don't know the language? Ass throwing is a universal language. You'll be fine, I promise. Recommendations of places to go on a budget. I really recommend looking at places where the American dollar is super strong. So Thailand, you could get a lot for your money. The biggest expense for going to Asia is buying the actual flight. Usually they're like between $1,000 to $2,000. You just have to look for cheap flights, and once you're over there, you're set. As far as like Europe, cheaper places would be like Spain or anywhere in Eastern Europe. The American dollar usually goes further there. Honestly, when it comes down to it, less developed countries will be cheaper in general. It's just the flight that's the most expensive part, but also be respectful when you go to a less developed country. Just be in mind of the culture and the ways that tourism can impact the culture that you're going to visit and experience. Nobody wants a stupid American in their country. Ways to have fun on a budget while you're on the trip. I found that the best way to save money on a trip with food or attractions or things to do is just get to know the local people. Like, they live there, they know the cheaper things, they're not doing tourist things all day, so they're not paying crazy tourist prices, and you can usually make a friend that way. And then you have a friend in a country that you've been to, and you can go back and visit them, and maybe they'll let you stay with them if you become good enough friends. Airbnb experiences can be cheap sometimes, but you'll probably be doing things with other people from your country and not really getting to know the country on like a local level. It really just depends on what you want out of your trip. Do you want a touristy experience? Do you want to live like a local? Yeah. Next question, Spirit or Frontier? I've actually never flown Frontier, so I have to say Spirit. I'd rather walk to my destination than fly Spirit, so you have to pay for everything on Spirit. And then they try to get you to like buy their credit card. It's a scam. And you don't even get free water or snacks. No. Tips for currency conversion. Just do your research. Sometimes it's easier to exchange in the country, sometimes it's easier to exchange at the bank before you go or at the airport. Always check fees, exchange rates. Don't just exchange currency with a guy on the street. I know a lot of people who have made that mistake, and they always regret it and sometimes get scammed, so. How far in advance do you start booking flights, hotels? What's your process pre-travel? So I don't really have like a set schedule for when I look for flights. I usually find that the cheapest is like 2 to 4 months before my travel date. So that's usually when I'll book flights. Hotels and Airbnbs don't usually fluctuate in price, so I just kind of book that whenever. I've booked it on the flight, I've booked it weeks before the flight, I've booked it when I'm there, but I will start watching flights like a year to 6 months before I travel. I'm constantly watching multiple locations for multiple dates. I watch for a long time. Don't buy super well in advance. Domestic is different. With domestic flights, I would usually buy a month before I travel. How to tighten food budget while traveling. If your Airbnb or hostel has a kitchen, definitely cook. Allow yourself to buy maybe 1 meal a day, but I recommend spending on food and saving on attractions, because the best way to learn about a culture is through their food. Or so they say. I don't know. So that's pretty much all the travel tips that I have for you. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to comment down below. Follow me on Instagram. Hit me with a DM. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!